Morning all. Today we have a snowstorm, and I'm here to introduce a new series of webinars with the Future Now community and group managed by Stephen Monaco and Jason Kanigan here. So I think they are around here. Shouldn't be long. Let me check if we have Stephen with us. Stephen and Jason probably won't be long. Stephen Monaco
Hi,
and
Stephen.
Jason Kanigan. How are you guys today?
Good afternoon.
Good. Hey, Jason.
Hey.
So it's a great day today, right? Even if we have a snowstorm here in Canada.
Montreal.
We are with both of you in the United States of America. God bless America. And we are having a great opportunity today to celebrate the first Future Now webinar that's going to announce a series of plenty of other webinars that are going to discuss about topics regarding marketing, strategy, cooperation, what's in it for everybody in 2018. And I'm going to leave the microphone to the star of the show, Stephen Monaco. Yeah. And I'll be back soon, during the webinar. Stephen,
okay.
And over to you.
Well, welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Jason, glad to have you here.
You bet. Hey, I am really excited to be able to do this with you because for those who don't know, Stephen, he managed a company up to $50 million in revenue that was sold for $70 million. He was running this thing, and it had 40 consecutive months of growth through two recession periods. Quarters, excuse me, yes. 40%, yes, that's even larger. Some might say 3 times the amount of months. And so this is nothing to sneeze at, because this clearly was not an accident. Stephen's clearly got knowledge, and that's what he wants to share on Future Now, what he sees coming up through the state of the art, and to bring to you that he feels you probably should pay attention to. And I'm excited about talking with him. He is not big on self-promotion and self-aggrandizement, so I'll do it for him. He's awesome. And I want to sort of lead off by so the ideal person watching today would be a division manager, a corporate executive who wants to stay up front on what's going on with marketing. Now, I know we talked a little bit about before the show here about companies that are playing it safe, big companies that are playing it safe with their marketing. What is the danger in doing that? What are they doing, and what is the danger in them trying to stay with things the way they were?
Well, playing it safe now is risky business, whereas in the past, the mindset might have been mitigate risk by playing it safe. But the skills that got you where you are today and caused or created success today are not the skills that will get you success in the future. So while the markets are changing around us and there's lots of disruption, maintaining the status quo is a huge mistake.
Okay. So how are they maintaining the status quo, trying to? And we all know, we've got a plane flying overhead, but we all know that actually trying to keep things the way that they are results in attrition. You're going to lose customers and die, right? You've got to grow or die in this situation, change or die. What are they doing that is emblematic of them trying to stay still? What would be a symptom of an executive watching to go, oh, I'm doing that. Uh-oh.
Well, if you're conducting your business the way you have been over the last, let me rephrase that. If you haven't started changing and adapting over the last 2 to 5 years, where there has been so much disruption, and marketing has changed more in that time than it has in the 50 years prior, then you might not like it, you might not want to hear it, but You're in an adapt or perish scenario, and doing things the way you used to do it just won't work in the future, or even work now, because of the we're in a digital age, in the era of the customer.
Okay, it's a very thoughtful answer there. To go back and go, well, let's actually run this from a different angle. So, what can companies be doing to start changing that relationship with themselves and their marketplace? If I was a small company, what would I do? Sorry, I
no, that's okay. That's
take
all right.
the pauses though.
No, you're
I need
fine
to clarify.
So I'm sorry, the question again?
What can a small company, say a startup, do to get more interaction with their marketplace?
In a way, it's simple as far as the concept is. All companies, startups, it doesn't matter the size of the company, from a Fortune 50 to a startup, needs to very actively engage in meaningful dialogues with consumers. And I mean that in the very literal sense. You need to listen to what they have to say. You need to listen to understand and listen to learn. Not feign listening politely and acting like you're listening with a polite look on your face while you're nodding like, oh, and then waiting to talk and waiting to broadcast that with a megaphone, that contrived marketing message. Like, here's our brand message that we've been working on. And customers and consumers, I mean, they don't want to hear that. They don't want to hear that stuff. They tune it out. We, as consumers, are bombarded with approximately 2,000 brand impressions daily. So as a survival mechanism, so to speak, we just had a filter built in to tune out anything that isn't germane to us or our families or our job and what we do. It's just noise. It's noise that we filter out. So getting engaged and in touch with consumers to understand them, it's important because they expect to be understood. The research from IBM, I'm privy to a lot of research as
you're an IBM futurist.
Yeah, I'm one of the original 24 IBM futurists, and they have millions to spend on, on research. The research indicates that consumers actually expect to be understood by brands, which is a tall order. However, if you are engaging with them and in meaningful dialogues on a variety of platforms, social, email, chat, your website, they want to be heard. They are demanding to be heard. And if they aren't feeling like they're understood, they just move on. They'll hit the eject button if they're a customer and move to a competitor. Or if they're a prospective customer and a consumer that is considering doing business with your brand, they just move along.
Okay. So that consumer is out there feeling like it's an automatic that they want to be understood. They expect it.
They do expect it.
That's an expectation. Okay. And if you don't have your listening ears, your microphones out there and your cameras watching them and what they're doing, because as we know, behaviors, right? They words on a survey or something can tell us something, but behaviors are actually the indicator of what people really are going to do, right? So we want to be watching. And the whole point here is to drive more sales and get more brand loyalty. I mean, you talk about raving fans a lot. Mm-hmm. Tell us about what a raving fan looks like, what a raving fan does. This is the end result that we want, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So what they do, well, first let me give you an example of companies who have raving fans. By raving fans, I'm not just talking about fans or customers that are loyal. They are raving fans in the way that some people rave about their favorite sports team or their favorite musical group, and in that type of fanaticism from the the root word
Right.
of fan. In that they're like, oh, I'm sorry, the companies, Amazon, Starbucks, Chick-fil-A, Costco, Apple, Coca-Cola, Samsung. I'm just rattling off some of the ones that are sort of top of mind. What they do is they create exceptional experiences, and that's what customers want. That will take a customer from being loyal beyond being a brand advocate, so that they're almost like a cheerleader. You know, they're out championing as a champion for the brand, and that kind of exuberant, unsolicited testimony is amazing for the brand.
Okay.
And all the research from IBM, Gartner Research, Forrester, the leading secondary research firms, indicate that a consumer will spend, and by consumer, I'm talking B2C and B2B. I'm just talking about people buying for themselves or for their company. They are demonstrating that they'll spend 10 to 40% more on products and services if they have an exceptional experience during that process. Right. So it's not about, you know, being the low cost leader. It's about developing and providing a service, an experience in the service or product offering, and every touch point with the brand that makes them feel good.
Feeling.
It's all about.
Feeling is so important, isn't it?
It really is. It's not the decisions. Of course, there's some intellectual part of the decision making, but it's very much an emotional part of the buying process, or the decision making process is a visceral thing. Like how a lot of times when a consumer disengages with a brand, they will do so at the first time they have a negative experience, and
like a negative customer service experience.
And the reason they leave and disengage with the brand and move on is based on how they felt, how the customer or the consumer felt, or how the brand made them feel.
So that's a good barometer overall, and then on an individual level as well. You can't really go wrong by checking in on how your target market is feeling about your brand.
Yeah, and the way to do that literally is to talk to them. Back to what I said. I mean, engage them in meaningful dialogues. By doing so, you're really in touch with what they want, what they need, what they value, what they're looking for, what they don't want. And that, along with, or take that, along with going deeper still and getting in touch with the market and understanding the market needs. By doing so, you can start anticipating what products and service offerings to create, and have a very good feel that those product and service offerings will be embraced, rather than, well, it takes the guesswork out, rather than just, raising the flagpole and see who salutes kind of thing. It's like you have a good idea that the market's going to embrace this, so you spend the money in R&D or creating a service with some certainty that there'll be adoption. Okay.
I want to dig into this a little more, because you have run a large software business.
Yeah,
I'm aware of at least one other software business that purported to be led by someone who felt that he knew all the answers and he would create something, talking about Apple, of course, just out of his own head and not listen to anybody. Is that a myth?
It is. Okay. It is. It's an urban myth. And you're talking about Steve Jobs. God rest his soul. I'm not going to say that Steve was a liar per se, but he was
probably not legal.
He was a hell of a salesperson.
Yeah.
In that he was a hell of a showman.
Mm.
Yeah, I mean, what he purported that they did at Apple, it isn't true, and it doesn't work for companies. And let me be more specific, like saying that Apple invented the mouse. Not true. Saying that Apple invented the GUI, the graphical user interface that the Mac was so famous for. It's just simply not true. Both of those things were invented by the Palo Alto Research Center called PARC, P-A-R-C, which was owned by Xerox, which is a really cool think tank in the Silicon Valley. And Apple licensed those things from PARC, Xerox.
Okay. So there was a lot more interfacing behind the scenes with that target market and with designers. And so Apple was getting a lot more input from the public, who were supposedly too dumb to know what they wanted, maybe until they were shown this is what it is. Then that marketing message is set. Okay. So it is critical. Big software companies, big companies, small companies should be doing this.
Absolutely. I mean, without question, it's paramount. In fact, it's crucial. It is absolutely crucial for long-term success. I mean, we could talk about trends for 2018 and what you should be doing, but let's also focus more long-term and have vision and build that into or bake that into your mindset of your organization, especially at the top. I mean, at the top of the organization.
The change that needs to happen. Okay.
Absolutely. Those companies that I mentioned that have raving fans, that did not happen by accident. That was quite purposeful. And it started with an intentional shift in mindset at the top with executives, or if not with executives, in many cases with people down lower in the organization who are in the trenches and we're dealing with consumers, as I often do. I mean, it's rare that the CEO is dealing with the consumers, but as that information trickled up from a grassroots standpoint, and you had advocates for the consumers at the lower level, and as it bubbled up to the organization, through the organization, and the executives started paying attention, that shift and leading within the organization and demonstrating throughout the organization that it's important. So employees and stakeholders buy-in is really, really important.
Yeah.
So
I have a question.
Yeah, Stefan, you're here. I see you. And I want to know how you've got this thing called the account-based marketing server. And I want to hear how that integrates with what Stephen has been talking about.
Yes, in fact, we've been talking several times, Stephen and I, about what kind of digital ecosystem in the Gartner's Group sense of the term we're using, and regarding surveys, and we were engaging with other CEOs of many companies. Stephen and I came to witness, in fact, the fact that it's a very fragmented world where people are using dozens of siloed online solutions for on premises or big companies, and actually you got a bunch of other tools, kind of widgets, aka gadget, that are doing marketing automation, that are playing with some analytics, but not the big picture as known as the big data, raw data, how to use data mining, things like that. And then it was clear that many years ago, people had to do something. So that came obviously from the open source community, that are understanding what are the workflows, business process, things like that, and they're doing their best with the coding languages to build something from scratch, and then a couple of decades after, because it needs maturity, then comes some solutions. So what we have here with our partner is a technology called account-based marketing servers, because in fact we are applying all the workflows necessary to deliver a customer experience or a customer journey, if you want to design it, with account-based marketing strategy. But that would be probably a topic, because Stephen agreed to create another series dedicated only for account-based marketing, because it's a specific subject matter that will be addressed. For now, because that's not the place to talk about account-based marketing today, I will have the opportunity to bring online with us Sandra Leigh Lester from Toronto. Hold on a second.
Well, we know Sandra from before. We've met you. That's awesome. Appreciate seeing you again.
Yeah,
Hi,
you
Sandra.
too.
You look like you're somewhere official. This looks like
No,
exciting.
home-based office.
Okay. Well, it's awesome to have you on. I know the last time we chatted, we got into a little bit of a discussion about the potential of actually interacting in request for proposal situations and finding out what each side offered or wanted, and being able to get to a better outcome than the not talking together.
That's right.
So,
Yeah.
So I'm wondering if an example might pop into mind, or there's something you want to talk about concerning
Sure.
the interaction that we've been discussing about the marketplace and the solution providers that are out there, the companies that are out there.
Yeah, so I've looked at other solutions for keeping track on what's going on and how people are building and what they're doing in their projects, and it's really clumsy at the moment. So for every small business, you're looking at different options for customer relationship manager, like a CRM. So there's a lot of stuff out there, but it's not really friendly for service-based businesses. There's a lot for products, but not for service-based businesses. And then you're looking at different processes. So right now I have an email server. I think I use iContact. I was using MailChimp. There's a few different ones out there. I've looked into CRMs, but they're just too clunky out there, and then you don't keep track of conversations. So I think I've got a Streak app in my Google mailbox. So between all these separate little siloed conversations, I lose track of what people are doing and then how I can help them. So I'm pretty excited with what you guys are creating, because it puts everything all in one dashboard. I used to use Hootsuite for social media to keep track of my social media engagement. So there's another silo. Like how are we as small business owners that are growing, becoming larger business, automated business owners? I want to be serving thousands of customers with an online tool that I'm developing. I think it's really powerful. It's like a Myers-Briggs of determining what you want your architect to do. So I'm an architectural interventionist. I help people hire architects. And imagine you're going through a process and you get this kind of personality type indicator for your building, what you really want people to do. And it'll be a recipe. A little bit of WELL certification, a little bit of LEED, a dash of energy use intensity. I'm using kind of technical terms, sorry, but that's what I do, is I push architects to do better. So I'm going to have thousands of people going through this funnel of and getting this out to literally thousands. So how am I going to keep track of that? I'll have to create relationships with all these people, right? That's ideally, you want to be serving your customer.
So, Stephen, is there anything that jumps to mind? I mean, you're familiar with Sandra's business,
I am.
right? Is there anything that jumps to mind that Sandra might do now that would help maybe kickstart that flow of conversations?
I'm not sure that he's online. I don't see Stephen.
Oh, Stephen. No, not Stefan, but
Oh,
Stephen.
Stephen.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm here.
Yes,
I get
two Stephans mixed up. So. And I don't see Stephen either.
Okay, well, he's here.
I'm here.
See him.
Okay.
So the question is there anything that Sandra could do to kickstart the process?
Right. Yeah, is there anything? Hopefully you're on. I see both of you.
I see only you.
Okay. Well, perhaps Stephen can answer, and I will ferry the message along.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's totally exciting to create one platform that has all of this information, so that we can really start finding out whether we're getting people along our funnel, and and know that they're going to be taken care of, that the discussion is going to happen, they're going to get their questions answered, that they're going to get as much information as they need in order to close the deal. And I think that's super exciting.
Right. Yeah. Rather than it being siloized in the content is in an email funnel and the CRM is keeping track of the individuals, and maybe you've got a spreadsheet for something else. And
I think that Sandra was referring to the actual need of company and CEOs and CMOs and marketing teams to have a engaged social conversation. There is a big buzzword these days called social selling. But everyone is talking about social selling, but everyone is also asking or pretending.
Right. What does it mean?
What does that mean? What's in the box? What's in the box in social selling? So some people are saying that's social conversation. That would be a great start, of course. But then when you are into social conversation, you need to have a strategic blueprint. This is why I'm partnering with Stephen Monaco, because he's really gifted and experienced with that social conversation. But he builds through an assessment, a strategic assessment. He builds a blueprint, and then when your topics are clear, then if you have topics, then you can have an agenda, and then you can have an engagement with several segments of the market or population or specialists, because people are different. They are completely different from one segment to another, depending of their industry, depending of their needs. Stephen was talking a minute ago about listen to them. And I'm not mentioning social media listening, because words, aka semantic fields, are words. You can also pretend a lot of things with words. This is why I love the moment when you guys mentioned, it would be also good to have some intel about behaviors, places, topics, platforms, where people are exchanging and trying to find out a solution. Everybody knows that, there would be in the 80s and 90s, there were a great trend about the forums, because actually people were exchanging solutions or sharing their problem, but on forums. But it was not instant. It was asynchronous. You post something and then you go 3 days after. You just look if you have an answer. You have relevant answer. You got some trolls that are flooding the forums topics and so on, or spamming as well. And I think forums have been probably the ancestors of social media today. So social media is something that is attached to a device, where forums were not attached to a device. So it's much about who is with the Internet of Things today, because actually I have seen some nice refrigerators that have a digital display, and giving you anything you want. If you want the weather, they're gonna tell you what the weather is. If you want to interact with what's inside your fridge, you can. But if you want to put Facebook, LinkedIn, or Twitter, you can that. And then it's very funny that in the kitchen, into domestic homes, then your
following you.
Your fridge is literally socializing with you.
Right.
But after, it's all about the insightful purpose.
So if Sandra wanted to work with a particular architectural firm, if you knew what the people at that firm were doing on social media, what they were interested in, what they were talking about, before you ever approached them, that would give you a wedge, wouldn't it? For, okay, I can start the conversation, or I can, that conversation is like a flowing river, right? I can jump in with them.
Yeah, and I'm trying to keep a pulse by,
powerful.
I'm trying to keep a pulse by following certain people on LinkedIn, and I have some Google alerts.
It's all, yeah.
I have conversations happening in email. I have different conversations happening on Facebook Messenger, in LinkedIn Messenger, and then trying to keep track of all that. What I end up doing is segmenting. I tackle one part of my segment a little bit. I like right now this week I'm talking to real estate leasing agents, and I'm keeping that conversation to LinkedIn, and I'm booking calls so that they end up on my calendar, because I'm writing an article about the challenges of creating workspaces that are healthy and productive. So I end up doing, I'm very good at juggling a whole bunch of tasks, but not a whole bunch of social media, not a whole bunch of communications, not a whole bunch of disparate platforms of information. And then I'm trying to engage with someone, and I'm thinking, where did I have that conversation? Was it Twitter?
Right.
Was it Facebook? And then it's nice because these things also build up your brand and your reputation. Like, I've walked into meeting rooms, and they're like, oh, I know you from Twitter. So it does work in that way, but it hasn't worked for selling yet for me. And I'm hoping that this becomes the game changer for me.
Well, it's important that you're engaging across all those platforms, and it's certainly a challenge, as you've explained. It's not easy, but it's important. It's very important.
Right.
That you're engaging them, and that you're developing dialogues and understanding people's wants and needs and values.
Yeah.
Right. I want to thank Nathaniel Schooler for joining us as well in the chat. He's watching. He's another IBM futurist. It's cool that he's here. Stephen, we talked a little bit about share of voice, which is the old method of measuring how awesome are you in the marketplace as far as your advertising thump goes. That's an old measure, as far as I understand from you. What's the new one?
Well, it is old, and it's still being used by many companies. And share of voice pertains to like your advertising spend and how much of your message did you get out. With the Super Bowl coming up, that's a good example. If you look at a pie chart of who made the most noise and got the most brand impressions by their advertising spend, that is share of voice. I've always considered share of voice to be a vanity metric, because the big companies with big budgets can spend a lot on advertising. However, there's a problem with that, and that is people tune out advertising. Not very many people watch ads on TV. The Super Bowl might be an exception. That's the reason some people watch the Super Bowl, is strictly for the ads. But generally speaking, with serialized episodic television, people still consume it, but they do it at their own pace, at their own leisure, at their convenience. They don't have to have their butt in a seat in front of the TV at a certain time, 8 p.m. on Thursday.
Right.
That's indicative of just advertising in general, in that what I spoke to earlier, in that people just tune it out. If it isn't pertinent or germane to them, their life situation, their family, their job, their business, their hobbies. It's just noise, so they tune it out.
Okay.
So just looking at share of voice is silly, in my opinion.
It's insufficient. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, what's important is the share of conversation. And that is a measure or indicators of what are people saying about you and your brand. Are they saying good things? Are they saying bad things? Are they mentioning you in passing with a very neutral sentiment? What's being said is much more important than the number of brand impressions that you got, because so many people, or there's so much waste in those large advertising spends. Sticking with the Super Bowl example, an ad runs for, beer is a popular thing that's advertised during the Super Bowl. Well, there's lots of people that drink alcohol that don't drink beer. Or there's people like myself who don't drink alcohol at all. So, it might be amusing. I might enjoy the Budweiser commercial with the Clydesdales or whatever, but it doesn't have any impact on me regarding purchase intent. So that's why I say it's a vanity metric. It's like, hey, we reached, 40 million people. Okay, well, how many of those 40 million gave a damn? How many of them were interested? And to what level? And
you spent a lot of money. Maybe it made a splash for a moment, but did you connect with actual buyers?
Without spending that kind of money, it's put it this way: it is more effective spending less money engaging with people. I keep saying that, but I'm not trying to beat a dead horse, because this is very relevant. This is very important. Get in touch with people. They expect to be heard from. They expect to be understood. They are demonstrating that. Research shows it. Polls with consumers show this, and their willingness to spend more money on brand or customer experiences that are exceptional. It's like I said, it's not all about the dollar and saving a buck. It's about convenience and a smooth transaction across every touch point. So, every touch point, like the one Sandra mentioned, social, email, website, live chat, it doesn't matter, or brick and mortar, it doesn't matter to the consumer which touch point it is. So they're not thinking about, I'm interacting with this part of the corporation. They don't care. That's immaterial to them. They want a consistent brand. Yeah, exactly. They want a consistent brand experience, and they want it to be outstanding. And if it isn't, the trend is this is a little scary for many, but the trend is that you get one chance. You make one mistake, they're out of there. They hit the eject button and they move on.
Right. And it doesn't matter how many shared values you've got, or if 10% of the price of the thing is donated to cancer research or whatever. If it's a lousy experience, they're just out of there. So this really
to be understood, how could they possibly be understood if you're not engaged in dialogues with them on an ongoing basis and listening to learn and understand and deliver what it is that they want and need and have expressed desire in.
And then the question is, how do you, as the company owner, track all those things, right, and keep them all in one place, which is Sandra's issue right now, which is looking like the ABM, the account-based marketing server, is a potential answer for that.
Well, okay. People talk about big data. That's a big buzzword and has been for several years. And it's a thing. I'm not saying it's not a thing. However, it starts with little data, and it's often siloed data in different parts of the organization. So the companies need to proactively get that data out of those silos and off those islands and get it into a repository that can be managed and can be data mined and you can start seeing correlations through data mining that human beings wouldn't see, and understand your customers' behavior, their past behavior, their buying habits and patterns, and things like that.
So this is a long-term strategy. This is not something that you're going to throw a ton of money at and make a big difference with tomorrow.
That's true, but it's absolutely crucial. I mean, if you don't start doing these things now, there won't be a later.
Tomorrow.
And I'm not trying to paint a doom and gloom scenario at all. And the adapt and perish is not a phrase that I coined about this. It's been said many times, and there's some books about it. It's just a matter of, people don't like change for the most part. They dig their heels into change. However, if you aren't changing and adapting, you're going to become irrelevant, and irrelevance leads to extinction. So it's not doom and gloom at all, because there are tremendous opportunities with these disruptions in the markets and the way consumers now behave because of digital and their connection to digital and being always on, online and connected to their mobile devices and things like that. So there's tremendous opportunity for smaller companies. Certainly there's opportunity for the huge companies to maintain their market leadership position and fend off competition. However, there's a tendency with the large companies to not be very nimble and be lumbering giants that are bound in red tape, and they don't turn on a dime, so to speak. As smaller organizations have the opportunity to seize the day on where there are shifts in these markets, and because of disruption, there are underserved markets that they can jump into and get a foothold and become the market leader and start taking away customers and market share from the huge corporation. So it's anybody's game as far as who's going to win in any given niche. However, the things I'm talking about are required no matter what the size of the company.
Right. So even if you're a small company, it's okay, because you can get that share of conversation.
You can get the share of conversation, and that's something that was literally impossible more than 10 years ago, before social media and before consumer behavior changed to be so that they're so digitally connected and always on.
And we could talk about influencer marketing and all the changes. I mean, how people go and buy a camera today is totally different than how they did 15 years ago, where a distribution channel of marketing shoved information at them, and that was the party line. And now there's an independent third-party influencer who's talking about the thing and reviewing it, and people are commenting on their channel, and that's the place to look.
That's how business is being conducted today. So going back to the earlier part of this broadcast regarding maintaining the status quo, that's a good example, Jason. If you're doing things the way you did, a decade ago or more, you're doing the wrong things because consumers behave differently. It's that simple.
How have you seen that in your field, Sandra, where it's more government and architecture and there's standards and rules?
Well, I see a lot of confusion in the marketplace around what green buildings are, what sustainability actually is, and what to do about it. So one of my market segments is homeowners, and there's a lot of confusion there. So I'm developing some courses for them, because I've been listening on those social media channels, and I've found out that they don't know how to start a basement renovation and make it green and healthy, and they don't know about low toxicity and materials. So it's really a critical issue when there's so many products out there in the marketplace, and there's a flood of resources, but they don't know who to trust. So how do you dip your toe into that, or your mouth into that fire hose of information and
not die?
Yeah, or the alternative is to
overwhelm.
Is to pick up a book like a renovation for dummies, but how out of date is that? It's if it's already in print, people are
It's dated. The fact that it was written and published, it's already dated, where you are establishing yourself as a thought leader, Sandra, by engaging in those in social and providing courses to get people educated and informed so that they can make intelligent decisions regarding the green finished basement in your example that they want, as opposed to going through the motions thinking they were going green when they actually weren't.
And a lot of people lose the opportunity to do stuff while they're doing the renovation of their dreams. So they might think, okay, I'm going to get a new kitchen. And if they spend $30,000, it's going to cost them maybe an extra $500 to put some good insulation in there while they're doing it, and some good vapor barrier. And you know what? The kitchen's going to be a lot more comfortable if you insulate it properly and do that well. But then just going through that step of what insulation? How do I tell my contractor to do it? What instructions do I give my contractor so that he doesn't put dust all over my, the rest of my house, and I can't smell the fumes upstairs in my bedroom? Like, everybody's probably gone, if you own a house, you've probably gone through a renovation and know how terrible it is, and it just doesn't have to be that way. So that's one area where I've been listening into the conversation and found a need for it.
Right.
And I'll be getting stuff out to them soon.
I like it.
That's good. That's best practices. Or best practices getting is back to engaging, listening, to understand, to engage, get those dialogues going. And it's, it is a challenge, but the mandate is clear, and you have to scale up these things. Let me give you an example. 80% of questions or problems that consumers post online on social media, where the brand has a platform, they've developed a platform on Twitter or Facebook, they go unanswered, ignored. The brand never even replies or responds to them. Wow. So going back to how does that make a consumer feel? Well, nobody likes to be ignored. It's rude. People get furious. I mean, literally furious. And they have this vendetta against the brand, and they become very active. 30% of them, if they're 30% of consumers, if they're when they reach out to a brand and the brand doesn't respond in any way, 30% will go and post negative things and go on a little rampage on social and talk smack on that company and just talk about their bad experience. And that doesn't bode well for consumers who are considering that brand or are early in their customer journey, making decisions as far as what they want or what they need. People listen to each other much more than ever before. I mean, reviews on Amazon and things like that, and other, just that type of change in business that, again, it goes back to consumers don't want to hear contrived messages from the brand over and over and over. They just tune them out. They have much more trust, almost twice as much trust in a total stranger who left a review than they do in the brand proper.
Right. And that was a startling statistic.
Yeah, and it's absolutely true. And so, not ignoring these changes around you as an organization because you don't like change. Well, that's just silly.
That's not survival. Sandra, what were you going to say?
It's not. It's like, where's your survival instinct? That's that's built into all of us biologically, and it's about all organisms, not just mammals, let alone we humans. You need to survive, and doing what you did, the way your dad ran the company, so to speak. It's like, sorry.
And the economics have changed a lot. So that was the point that I wanted to make, that people have to be a lot more careful with their money these days. If you're looking at an expenditure and you're trying something different, you want to go and check out the recipe on Pinterest, or check it out on allrecipes.com, or check out the products on, if somebody if I'm listening to a podcast and somebody recommends a product, I keep an ear out for that. Like, oh, of all the products that they chose to speak about, it was this one. And they've been using it for 10 years and how much of a difference it made in their life. And I'm like, I really think I don't even know if that will work, but I really think I should buy that because they are vouching for it so highly.
It's another example of how much consumer behavior has changed over the last handful of years. You know, it started with millennials being always on and on social media and stuff. And, you know, it has bubbled up through age demographics to, you know, people well into their 70s and octogenarians. I mean, they get online, usually through their mobile device, their phone, and they want to see what other people are saying. So again, that's why it's important to engage in the dialogue. I mean, while people are saying things about your brand, get into that dialogue with them. If there was a problem, admit there was a problem.
Yep.
People
Sorry,
love
we
honesty,
screwed up.
transparency. They don't want to be lied to. And corporations have a long habit and a propensity to do that, to quickly sweep it under the rug. And that's a huge mistake, you know, that we're human beings. So acknowledge that there was a problem and speak to how it was resolved, or even thank them for bringing it to your attention, because you realize it wasn't just that incident that was a problem, but it was an underlying friction point in the way the organization is set up, in the way they conduct business. Upon learning that from the dialogue, you go in and adjust the business process to remove the friction point. But the dialogue is so important. And as we were speaking briefly before we went on air, Jason and I, this stuff is in many ways very, very fundamental. However, it isn't being acted on like it should be. You know, many companies don't act on it at all. And, you know, my question to them is, how do you intend to survive long term?
Right. If your marketing and your features development isn't being driven by these conversations, it's kind of mind blowing to me, because I've taken the courses. I've been a product manager. I know you should be listening to your customers and figuring out what features are financially smart to develop, right? And building that into that product lifestyle, that product development. Mm-hmm. And to hear that big companies are not doing that is, frankly, it's shocking to me.
Well, it's like an echo chamber within the company. That happens very frequently, in that the executives are cavalier, and you know, they think that they know better. They think they know what the consumers want. However, again, if you're not talking to them, I find it arrogant, frankly, and very presumptuous to just think you know what the masses want, just because what you intuited, that you learned it by osmosis. Not very likely. You learn it much better if you're talking to people. And when I talk about talking to people, it's not just the customers and consumers. It's vendors and other stakeholders, people in that market space. You can get so much knowledge from people that are, you know, around that ecosystem, so to speak.
And it can be transformational, right? I mean,
very much so.
That reminds me of design charrettes. So I have quite often held design charrettes where we get people from the community whose multi-story building is getting renovated, and we get them in there and talking about the issues and talking about the problems that we need to address during the renovation. And we make sure that we make decisions that don't have a repercussion on the indoor environmental quality. So, you know, making sure that seniors that are on oxygen tanks in social housing aren't going to get sick during a renovation. I mean, that's super important. And likewise, with people and consumers, there are products out there, furniture products, that literally have been falling over. And if they had been, you know, talking, like listening in their channels a little bit more, I think they would have known about the problem and maybe prevented a few deaths as well. So this becomes not only a critical issue in terms of product design and making sure you have a better product, but also brand reputation. People are going to know so fast if you're doing something. There's a big petition out right now in this social media. We increased our minimum wage in Ontario, in our province, and there's a huge social media petition out because of the benefits that this one franchise actually did, and the backlash is going against the whole corporate the whole corporation, not just the franchise itself. This one franchise owner decided to take away a few benefits because the minimum wage went up, and wow, the backlash. Like, this is one of Canada's favorite brands, and it is getting dumped right now.
Former Vancouverite, so I pay attention to all that stuff.
You know the brand that I'm talking about.
I do.
I use names.
Yeah.
But wow, we got to be part of the conversation, and we got to keep track of the conversations that are happening. Those are the brands that are going to succeed in the future.
Right.
It's true.
Now, where I wanted to go, Stephen, is there's that old saying, probably by Henry Ford, if I asked the customer what they wanted instead of a car, right, they'd have gotten a super powerful horse and carriage or something, right?
And I
wanted to get into the transformation that's possible from listening to. You don't have to build more of what you had. You could use that data, right, to come up with something new and better.
Well, kind of like Steve Jobs, Henry Ford, I mean, he did say that. However, Ford Motor Company didn't invent the automobile. It had been invented in Germany years before. What Henry Ford did was streamline the production with an assembly line. So, little wordplay there to establish himself as the thought leader in this emerging new market where the Model T Ford was just, usurping the buggy and the horse-drawn buggy. But I'm sorry. So there was a question in there, Jason?
I think the point was, if you had asked the customer what they wanted, they would have said only black.
More horses, or more better carriage or something. And I want to like contrast that with what you're saying and show the audience how interacting with the target market and getting that feedback and that interaction can actually help develop a better solution. Right? It could carry you to the car from the horse and carriage. Is there an example that jumps to mind from past work experience, let's say?
You
know
what? You went offline. Yeah, you did go offline.
It's just because I jumped in because actually, I was thinking that when you're doing, for example, for what I call customer engagement, you're doing live webinars or Facebook events like this one today, then you are having, of course, between peers, a discussion, relevant one about many topics, and that nurture all the audience as well, because they can relate to it, whether or not, but at least they're knowledgeable after that. And what's neat for the people today is that technology can bring new things. For example, you got that technology called WebRTC, which is in fact, I would like to compare that to a video phone, but then you can be server on that. And if you want, you have the option to broadcast on YouTube or Facebook Live your video phone station or your video conference. And that's a way. If you are inviting customers, that's the way to engage with them, because it's different from, handing over a market survey to some panelists, that are going to try to figure out, what's the market expectation. It will always be something that would lack a bit of authenticity and instantaneity. Because if you have a WebRTC, you just open the station on a web server, and then you're connected with the audience that have handles, emails, They have their own smartphones. So it's the world of Internet of Things, the famous IoT. And that, as you know, there's no room and no option to do some pretending sessions or organization, which are disguised lunch and learn, right? You can really have the temperature of the market just raw live instantly. It's all about, do you have a follower base? Do you have customer engaging with you? Do you want to plan that 1 week before, 3 days before, even like a quarter of a minute before? And then you have a clear idea of what people are saying and thinking, because it's live and it's now. There is no shield, there is no filter that you are sometimes using in communication and marketing. So you want to show round corners instead of itchy ones. Hey, what do you think about that, Sandra?
Oh, I think that having immediate feedback helps the design decision. So you can basically throw out a prototype, get the users to try it, and then you can refine it before you launch it. And then you can do test launches in certain areas, perhaps a beta, perhaps a small segment of your market. I know that I was in Australia when Mac Cafe was test launched and as a pilot, and they were basically trying to see whether it would have market penetration, whether people would enjoy going to McDonald's for a espresso instead of a regular coffee shop, and it did quite well. So they ended up launching it in other countries. And I think other companies should follow suit as well. Let the customers co-design products and services with you.
It makes a lot of sense to me. I worked with a change management consultant for a year, and he worked with companies of 1,000 people or more, IT firms, and his big thing was co-creation, about getting the workers to get involved in that creation of that new process, to avoid what would we call it, like static or resistance to implementation. So I think it makes sense here, doesn't it? You know, helping them have a voice in what. I mean, again, all this stuff sounds so simple, and yet companies are apparently so bad at it.
They often are. You know, this is part of the thing with live video, is that you were asking me something before Stephen jumped in. And, were you looking for an example of a?
If you could think of one about.
I was trying to remember what you were asking specifically.
Right, of how how customer feedback has resulted in a better product and a different product too. Like, not just, oh, we made it 3 inches longer or put an alarm clock in it, but we totally turned it into something else.
You know, I don't have one that jumps to mind as far as.
I could give you an example.
Yeah, sure. Okay.
So Frog Design has always used like a deep dive stakeholder examination experience, and then they co-create their products.
Mm-hmm.
They're well known for creating products for Apple, all these tech companies, even a shopping cart. There's a great YouTube video about the shopping cart charrette, and how they go to a grocery store, a few grocery stores, and they talk to the people that are in the grocery store. How do you use this? What are the problems with it? What fits in the shopping cart? What doesn't fit? Is this comfortable for your kid? Do you feel safe? Is it user-friendly? Is it fun? And then they go back and they take all the pictures and interviews and all the information back, and they use that for the design process. And this design thinking methodology is actually being used in business as well, so that you're starting to look at how how you can use design to design processes within business that break down silos, and how you can use different platforms to share information, whether it be between financial and accounting about risk management, or whether it be between marketing and sales. I mean, that's always that weird little, there ends up being that weird little division.
That's an excellent segue, and it wasn't purposeful segue, but it's a great one. As a longtime chief marketing officer, it absolutely puzzles me when I hear about the divide between sales and marketing within organizations. It's like, what is going on? That doesn't make any sense to me. I mean, a lot of times sales people don't want to hear it, but sales is a function of marketing. And I mean, I was a CMO of a company where the VP of sales who was hired on, when he found out he was reporting to me and not the CEO, he freaked out. And he didn't even know me. It wasn't a personal thing. It was an org chart thing and his ego. Sales and marketing need to be in lockstep with one another. I mean, you don't necessarily, the leaders of those departments don't necessarily have to be best friends, but they better have an excellent working relationship. They have to. You cannot let your organization have a divide internally between sales and marketing.
Mm-hmm.
And to the co-creation thing, I didn't want to beat my chest about Procom and the software company that had 40 consecutive quarters of profitable growth, but we didn't call it co-creation. I mean, we weren't mindful of that word, but we were mindful of the process and being in touch with the consumers. And when you had a wish list in your database of, 150,000 people asked for this feature set, well, and that was by far, in a way, the leading request. Well, guess what? That was the top thing that R&D worked on and the programs worked on to put in the next revolution of the product. As you asked that question, Jason, about product enhancement, nothing leaped to mind, but as far as messaging and advertising and things like that, I've seen a lot of things from improvements in that, where the message, again, the contrived message that was created by the marketing department and or their ad agency or whatever, just didn't resonate. In fact, a lot of times it alienated loyal customers. Dr. Pepper did one in 08 or 09 with their, I think it was called Dr. Pepper 10. It was like their low cal, low sugar thing. And the way they positioned it really, really alienated women. And, that's 53% of the market. So, you gotta listen and learn and reposition and retract and make apologies and stuff. Again, all this stuff stems from this, executives are just talking amongst themselves within the company and not getting, a sounding board from the market, which is a huge mistake. One of the favorite business horror stories is Blockbuster Video. I mean, people say that Netflix killed Blockbuster. Well, that's not true at all. Blockbuster killed Blockbuster. They were cavalier. They saw, or at least they should have seen, that consumer behavior was changing. People didn't want to get in their car and even just drive down the neighborhood to the local Blockbuster store when you could live stream video via or programming movies via cable or satellite, and you could do it from the comfort of your home in your pajamas. You didn't have to go out in the weather, and it might cost $1 more than the rental. There was no late fees, and you could get it right now. I want to watch this movie right now. And that's the way consumers think now. Blockbuster had the opportunity to buy Netflix a couple times for $50 million, and they just passed. Again, cavalier is the word that comes to mind, too big to fail. Really?
Right, and if you look at the charts, Blockbusters just goes like that on their cash and their valuation, and Netflix it's not as steep as in a rise as the decline, but they outpaced them after a while, and
big time,
obviously. Yeah. And so Blockbuster started with this multi-billion-dollar budget. They could have done something with them.
Exactly.
Yeah, completely lost it. I happened to be looking at this stuff a couple days ago, so that's why it's fresh in my mind.
I'm a kind of obsessive about that, researching these things so you can learn from other companies' mistakes. Right. Kodak was the same way. In 76 or 77, they had 90+% of the photographic paper and photographic chemical to develop the chemicals to develop film or prints, I meant to say. And the ironic thing, cruel irony, is that Kodak invented the digital camera. Not a lot of people know that, but they invented the digital camera, and they only marketed it to the military and academia, like universities, because they just didn't think there was any need for consumers to use it. But with that in mind, it wasn't like a thing that happened overnight. The slow progress of people gravitating over to digital cameras and not using 35 millimeter film. It wasn't like they just woke up one day and went, wow, everything's different. They just kept on doing the same old when, and look where, they filed bankruptcy.
Yeah. That's a story near and dear to my heart, as I'm a digital photographer, hobbyist, I guess you would call it. So I think we'll wrap up there, Stephen.
Okay.
Thank you for being here, Sandra. Really appreciate seeing you again.
Sam. Good to see you again.
So what we're going to do, we're having webinars twice a week. Tuesdays is the Future Now webinars, just like this, where we'll be exploring what Stephen believes is the state of the art and what's new and important for company leaders to pay attention to. Thursdays will be the account-based marketing software as a service discussion, where we'll really dig into the technical details if you're interested in what Sandra was talking about things not being siloized and things being accessible in your interaction and growing that digital ecosphere that we're talking about, right? That'll be pretty cool. So there's a couple groups for each. I'm sure Stefan will link to them. And my thanks to Stefan and MyBBTV for hosting this. And I encourage our viewers to ask questions in the comments section. Please do. We will get back to you. We will see them. And
absolutely,
I will make sure that Stephen works through the night to answer those.
I will engage. I guarantee it.
That's right. Well, thank you. I believe we'll end right there, Stefan, if you'll sing us out.
Thanks, Jason. Appreciate it.
You bet. Let's stop our camera.